Bids are in. The gavel is dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, we are finally hammered here at WineBid. This is our podcast dedicated to all things wine value and wine auctions. And of course, this is our French episode. I am Jeff McGurn here on our WineBid marketing team. With me, as always, is the illustrious wine auction and wine expert, Paul Walker.
Okay.
Welcome, Paul, to our French episode. Let us dive right into this. We have a ton of really interesting stuff coming to auction this week, particularly Bordeaux. We've got a lot.
I thought you were going to start with Bordeaux. I thought you were going to start with it. I just had an inkling you were going to
I had an inkling. It was like pages and pages and pages of Bordeaux.
There's an embarrassment of riches in Bordeaux this week, for sure.
Embarrassment of riches. Immediately I was looking at we talked about some 89s last week. 89 Margaux coming into auction, $440 for an 89 Margaux. I don't know. To me, that seems like a great deal for a first growth Bordeaux. Like, you're not going to find Margaux on Premier at release for less than $500 unless there's like an economic collapse or, once in a lifetime pandemic. Actually, once in like 2 lifetime pandemic. And that,
don't jinx it, Jeff.
I know, knock on wood. But I don't know. I look at that 440, that seems like a steal for an 89.
No, we've talked about, vintage variation and people's preference for vintages based on maybe, scores from way back when. And so I think it pays to do a little bit of seller tracker research, if you will, and find people that drink a lot of really good wine. If they're not professional critics, maybe do a little homework on seller tracker and find people that are, drinking some of the wines that you like to drink. Again, it takes a long time to do this, but I think it does pay off. And so anyway, point is, 89 has traditionally been, far, far less than say 90 or 83 or 82 or whatever. And you're right. It's probably drinking great. I kind of strayed from the older wines in Bordeaux this week, and I looked at some of the younger vintages, and I saw 09 Margaux and 10 Margaux. And if you'll permit me real quick, I always like to bring up the Very Expensive White Wine Club. And once again, this week, there's Pavillon Blanc Margaux, which is the second label white wine. And it's crazy. It's $310 for the 17. I couldn't believe it. And there's Pavillon Rouge. You can get the 95 Pavillon Rouge for $150, the 2016 Pavillon Rouge for $180. 3 bottles of 16 Pavillon Rouge for $180. And then I was like, 17 Pavillon Blanc, $310. I was like, wow, that's a lot. So anyway,
it's the
see all the selections from Margaux.
VEWWC, the Very Expensive White Wine Club. Speaking of like juxtaposing neighboring vintages, 62 Latour, right? Which for $600. Now, I've not had a 62 Latour or a 61 Latour, but what folks are saying, or what I'm reading in the tasting notes, is that it may not be the 61, which 61 is a storied vintage of Latour, but it is still extremely good. And $600 for a bottle of Latour is not crazy, especially one that's got, that many years of, you're looking at 61 years of age on something like that.
Yeah, no, 62 trickier, not obviously completely overshadowed by 61. I'll bet that's a fascinating wine to try. And, it's, like you said, it's not nearly as bad. Again, I looked at, for the vintage of the Latour I picked this week, we're 96 at 665. I had that wine on release, and I thought it was amazing. 09 is 875, and then 2010 at 1200, which I thought was kind of a big discrepancy in price between the 9 and the 10. I would opt for the 9 at 875, versus, kind of funny to me that the 10, and I think they both got 100 points, so I'm not really sure why the 10 is so much more, but who knows?
We had 89 Aubryon, which is interesting. So the 89 Margaux, 440, 89 Aubryon, which of course, triple 100 pointer, 1665. But what was really fascinating to me was that this bottle in 2022 got as high as $2,000 a bottle. And it's been slowly declining down to 1665 now. I'm wondering if we've seen the last of its decline, if it's going to plateau here, or it might recede a little bit, maybe go to $1,500.
Yeah, it's possible. We talked, was there another bottle in, 2 weeks ago or something?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and so I didn't even bother to look if that other one sold because
I think it ended up,
now.
I want to say it did sell for 1665.
Yeah, it's sold because this is the only one that's in the new lot up this week. It is the only one in the auction. So.
It did sell for 1665. We've just seen this bottle steadily sort of come down in price, $2,000 down to $1,850, basically down to 1665, jumped up to 1765, back down to 1665. We have a 64 Cheval Blanc for $800. Again, I think it's cool to see a lot of these 60s first growth. Then the other one that I thought was really cool, and this one will be really cool for anybody having a birthday this year, the Mag of 83 La Maison Aubryon.
Oh, yeah, that's a gorgeous bottle. I did see that.
For $520, I don't know. I think that's a steal for LMHB. I think that'll be fantastic, especially because it's probably going to be drinking even better than your typical bottle because it's a Mag. We had a 75 Riesek, this one for $80. We also have a 71 and we have a 75. The 71 is going for $225, but the 75 is going for $80. So 48 years of age, for $80. I think that's a fantastic deal as well.
Yeah, no, 75 or 86, that's great Sauternes. And I think, for under $100, that's an amazing bottle. And, great Sauternes vintage. So yeah, can't go wrong there for $80. What was the other vintage you mentioned?
There was a 71 for $225.
71 Riesek for $225?
71 Riesek for $225.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, I would opt for the 75 and 80 personally. I haven't had the 71, so I could be way off. But
that was kind of my thought process. Was 71 for 80 seems about right, and I think that's still a killer deal. We had a 66 Rosanne Segla. This one for $85. Tasting notes from as recently as October say it's still quite good. I think $85 for something with that much age on it is also pretty cool. I mean, you're talking 57 years of age on it, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm doing my math correctly. And then 94 Du Hart Malone Rothschild. This one for $65. Again, drinking great right now. Solid price for something that's got, 29 years of age, almost 30 years on it. That's going to be a solid Bordeaux. And then a 95 Montbosquet. Bousquet. Yeah. I got it right the second time. $70. Really only $10 to $20 more than you're going to get the stuff on release. And again, you're looking at something that's got 28 years of age on it, right? And it's still drinking great right now. And then a 2011 Melka Majestique Les Chalets Vineyard. I thought this was interesting. This one I've never heard of before, but it gets amazing reviews at $60.
Yeah, so that's Philippe Melka, who's got all kinds of things going on in Napa and elsewhere. But the French wines I'm not familiar with at all. So I don't know. I think the vineyard's in Saint-Emilion, if I'm not mistaken. The Majestique Le Châtelet, is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're saying, did you mention the 11? Is that the one you mentioned? Yeah, it's from Saint-Emilion. I've never tasted these wines. There's also, looks like there's 14 in the auction too at 50.
And for only $25, you can get a 2018 Chateau.
Yeah, that was kind of my theme this week was second labels and, from different places. But
this is the first label for $25, the Chateau Haut-Brisson. If you say it really fast, people will think you said Chateau Aubryon, but it's just, it's Haut-Brisson.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about something else. Haut-Brisson?
Haut-Brisson. But it does get good reviews and it sounds like Aubryon. So I was actually thinking of buying that and pouring it for people and then just coughing when I said Brisson, and then not showing them the label.
The other wine that stuck out with me, which I thought was interesting, was the Chateau Sillon. And there's all kinds of scores for it. In the 2019, it's got a very kind of fancy engraved looking label for $40 from Margaux. And I can imagine that's probably pretty tasty stuff. So I thought, and there's the other thing I was going to say too, is there's quantities on some of these lots as well. There's 5 of the 19 Syrah. I found also from Margaux, 05G Score, there's 17 bottles of that for $100 a piece. So you can almost certainly win one of those at reserve, if not very close to it, with 17 bottles in the lot. Let's see, a couple other interesting Bordeaux I was going to mention. Yeah, there's a 2010 Cheval Blanc as well, $835. Yeah. It's well, this one's probably headed to four-figure territory before too long. And so that was kind of caught my eye. 95 Brunet du Cru, we've talked about this before, but a couple bottles at 65. I still think that's quite reasonable, especially with that much time on it, almost 30 years. And let's see, 18 Fombroge for 40. That stuck out to me as well. Very tasty vintage and not under $50. Let's see, 1995 Chateau Gazin, one of those at 80. That stuck out as well. You don't see it as often as some of these other larger chateau in Bordeaux. 96 Grand Prix Lacoste, a couple of those for 120 a piece. You've mentioned
saw those.
Yep. Yeah, quite a bit. 98 Fleur de Bouard, one of those at 40. I thought that was very reasonable. Great vintage for the right bank, Bordeaux. $40, not too bad. You mentioned, I think, the 83 Le Mission Magnum. I saw there was a 2015 at $315, which I didn't think was, overly expensive for Le Mission, and will probably last many, many years and be great 10, 20 years down the road. There's some Lagrange. I'd like to mention it because I thought it was reasonable wine for Saint-Emilion, for high quality Saint-Emilion. And there's 95 for 95, 96 for 95, and 2000 for $100. And there's 7 of those. So some fun stuff. There's more Lynch Bajan this week. We always talk about that.
We always talk about the Lynch Bajan.
Yeah, it's a crowd pleaser.
It's a crowd pleaser.
Is in. I don't know if you've had the 80HF, but I've actually had this wine quite a few times, and it's at 220. It was never that high, but people know that it's very, very good, and it can really compete with the big boys. So there's a couple of those 88s in at 220. There's 95 in, which I had a whole bunch of times ever since release. Great stuff.
What about the 85, number one wine of 1988?
The 85?
Yep.
Okay. I didn't even know there was 85. I know there's multiple vintages of a lot of things, but
I have had the 85, and it is quite amazing.
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah, the 85 was fantastic. Let's take a trip over to Burgundy, shall we?
Hold on. I'm not done.
Are you not done yet?
No, I've got a few more Bordeaux. Sorry. 09, 10 Margaux. Don't forget those are in right now. 780 and 640. We mentioned them, I think, already. 83 Montrose, 85 Montrose.
I saw the Montrose.
Yeah. The 90, of course, huge money for the 90. It's $630 reserve. So that's because of that famous score. But then the 95 is in for only 140, which I think is quite reasonable. And then the 96 at 195. So, and then there's a couple of my favorites from Pichon Lalande. There's the 78 Pichon Lalande for 175, which is a great deal. It's great wine. And also the 88, which is completely underpriced at auction. It got dogged when it was released, but people who know, this is killer wine. 88 Pichon Lalande's at 150. You mentioned Rosan Ceylas also. I said there's 95 in it, a couple of bottles at 110, and then bottle of 05 at 160. So I think that was about it. Oh, Petit Haut Lafite. There's the Smith Haut Lafite second label, $30 for the 18, and I think it got some really good scores. So I thought that was reasonable. And then let's see, just going down the alphabet. Sorry, Trolong Modo 98 for 3 of those at 100. Don't see it all that often. It's great wine, great vintage. Multiple vintages of Clos de l'Oratoir also. The 98's at 70, the 2000's at 65, 18 is at 50. 98 Clos de Marquis, 2 of those at 60. And let's see, second label of Certain de May. Or no, Vieux Chateau Certain, excuse me. Le Gravet de Certain, 2015, one of those at 55. So, all right, I'll shut up about Bordeaux.
Love the VCC. All right, let's go over to Burgundy. Not nearly as much Burgundy, I think, coming into auction this week as we have Bordeaux. We just had a ton.
No, but some great wines, though. Some really cool stuff.
Some really cool stuff. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Coche-de-Rue Merceau Le Rogeau. This one already getting action. We've got 2 of them and it already has a bid. And this one we last saw bottled in 2017 sell for $470, but it's going for $990 now. And clearly the market supports it because it has bids. I thought that one was just really interesting to see that, coming out. That's rare stuff, right? That's a good amount of money for that bottle. Domaine Ponceau, Claude de la Roche, Villers-Vignier. This one, there's a mag of it for $730.
What vintage is the Claude de la Roche mag?
2010.
Oh, because it's funny. I flagged the 750 because it's at 475. How much is the mag?
It's 730. We've only seen this mag once before in January 2022, and it sold for 920. There's a 750 at auction selling for 475.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. That's what I was going to say. Like, wait a minute. So there's 3 mags available at 730 a piece. That's definitely a better deal than the 750 at 475.
I mean, I would go for the mags. It's going to be in better condition because it's in a mag, most likely. There's a Faveli Mal Chambertin 2010 for $325. The Mongerd Munoret Claude de Rougeau 2013, which already has 2 bids on it. Started at 110, is now 130. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think that's, it's overshadowed by another Munoret producer, but the Mongerd Munoret wines are good and they're quite reasonable next to a lot of their neighbors. So
110. Yeah,
for Claude, I mean, Claude Rougeau's, you got to know the wines, I think, to know what's good and what's not. But that's still reasonable compared to a lot of other stuff in the area.
One that I thought was interesting, I want to get your thoughts on, was this Atine Sauzet. We've got a Chassagne Montrachet from Atine, and then we've got a Pouligny Montrachet, both 09s. And the Chassagne Montrachet was 45. I mean, do you count that as a good price?
Yeah, I would. I think, especially for 09, great vintage. There's multiple bottles. I wrote some of those down too. There's 09 Pouligny. I thought the Pouligny Montrachets were, especially the 09 Chancan at 76. Obviously, 4 bottles have bids. I thought was very reasonable. There is also 09 Pouligny like a Rennes at 135, which is quite a bit more than the Chancan, but I think the Chancan was probably underpriced. And then 09 Les Perrières from Pouligny Montrachet from Sauzet, 3 of those at 135. So nice selection of Sauzet wines, but the Chassagne, not expensive for the 09.
What about this 04 Jean-Philippe Fichet Pouligny Montrachet?
That was another one I wrote down for sure. Le Refaire, the 3 of the 04s, those got bids at 66.
2 bids. Yeah, 2 bids already. It's up to 66. Yeah. We have 3 of them. I mean, I was looking and I'm like, you're looking at $65 for Premier Pouligny Montrachet, which...
Yeah, I mean, Fichet's really, really tasty. I would say better known for Meursault. I haven't had the Pouligny Refaire, but that's not expensive for that neck of the woods by any means.
And then a 95 Francois Lemarche Echezot. This one actually already...
Lemarche, yeah.
5 bids.
Yeah, well, it's you can see it's totally cheap. I mean, Echezot for $150 from 95. That's way.
Yeah, well, $95 for an Echezot from 95, right? So I was Grand Cru Berg for under $100, and of course it's going to go up, right?
When did you look at this? Because when I wrote it down today, it was at 151.
Yeah, when I wrote it down, it's at 151.
Okay. I thought maybe you said last night, and you said it started at 95.
Yeah, it started at 95, so it started at $100.
That's way underpriced. So yeah, the market will fix that one.
And then
you notice there's Bon Romanée Chaume from Lamarche 2010. That's at 165. So go figure. It makes the Echezot look incredibly cheap, which doesn't make any sense.
Which is why I picked out the Echezot. Right?
Yeah. It's like, what? 95 Echezots? It's $95? Like, what's wrong with this bottle? So no, that's way underpriced. So it'll get fixed by Sunday. And then there's 12 Malconsor from Lamarche as well at 220, which is, more expected in that area. And then 13 Malconsor at 180. So not surprising there.
I mean, all significantly more than that steal of a deal if it stayed at 95. 95. I think we have a good idea. Yeah, I guess we have a good idea where that Echezot is headed. Right. It's
exactly.
I mean, I'm sure that one we're going to be talking about on the recap episode a week from now. The 07 Chandon de Brelay Savigny-le-Bon.
Chandon de Briaye.
Le Briaye, Savigny-le-Bon. This one already has action, but it's a Premier Cru for $45.
Yeah, I don't know these wines very well, but I noticed lots of scores, or lots of barrel scores on them anyway. But interesting to see where those go. Yeah, you're right. There's definitely getting some traction there too, because they obviously have bids. So not too bad.
What other Bergs were on your radar this week?
A couple bottles of Bouchard Montrachet stuck out. There's the 06 at 475, 2 of those, and 11 at 400. Or excuse me, did I say 275 at $475 for the 06 and $400 for the 11. 2010 Moment Saint Claude Tart at $765, which is a crazy number, but that wine has gone way up in recent years. One of my favorite producers of Corton and Beaune wines is Domaine d'Equois. There's a case, actually, 12 bottles available of the 17 Corton Les Grèves for $100 a piece. Those wines are very, very good. Some Duroche wines snuck in this week. 2015 Gevrey Chambertin Jeune Bois. There's 3 of those at 95. I think there's another lot at 95 as well. And I'm sure those will get some activity. There's a couple, dare I say, inexpensive Domaine Leflevre wines in this week. Bourgogne Blanc, 17 at 90. The Macon Verzet, 3 of those of the 18 at 55. And then 17 Brie Premier Cru, 2 of those at 92. So some bidding going on there already. I mentioned the Fonso Claude LaRoche Magnum, which is a better deal than the 750. There's also 14 Chambolle-Musigny Charms at 135. We mentioned the Sauzet wines, which I thought were interestingly priced and quite rare. Oh, there's a producer that one of our colleagues, Paul Swanson, tipped me off about, Jerome Galéron. And that is, I've never seen that at auction before. So that stuck out to me. 19 Bourgogne Rouge, Cuvée Antonin, 6 bottles at 30, which seems quite reasonable. I wonder if this is gonna go up or if this is the time to get it. Anyway, you heard it here first. 19 Gevrey Chambertin Le Justice from Galéron, one of those at 75. I think there's another lot of that as well. And then let's see, there was also one of our favorites, Colomboret Rosé, 5 bottles of the 19 at 45. 45 does seem like a lot of money for Rosé from Burgundy, but it's quite good. I've had a couple of vintages of this in recent years and it's delicious. Again, yeah, sure, it's expensive. You can buy Tempier for, well, what, $55? But anyway, I love this stuff. So. And then there's Centenaire, 14 Centenaire from Colomboret, Sept Centenaire Old Vines at 61. So it's got a bid. And I think that about wraps it up. Oh, a couple bottles of Jean Griveaux Clos Vougeot as well, 14. 6 bottles of the 14 at 210 and 2 bottles of the 15 at 285. So some pretty amazing stuff from Burgundy this week. Oh, sorry, 2 more. Joseph Juran Chambolle-Musigny Amoureuse. I always like to bring up Amoureuse when we see it in auction. It's just such great stuff. And there's 2 14s at 355. And then the big boy, 08 Drouhin Musigny at 770. So that now really wraps it up.
Let's talk about something that I noticed, which I'm sure you probably noticed as well. Let's head over to the Rhone. We have one of my favorite Châteauneuf du Pape producers. We have Claude de Pape has an 05 Châteauneuf du Pape for 140, or you can buy the 05, and that's a 750 milliliter, or you can buy a 3 liter for $405. So if you buy the 3 liter, it ends up being $69 per 750 milliliter, which for that vintage, which is a great vintage for Châteauneuf du Pape, and especially for Claude de Pape, that's a phenomenal deal for that. I mean, $405 for that seems amazing to me.
Yeah, no, true. It's always funny when these big formats seem to go for less for whatever reason.
Like half. It's like half off. And we literally have we have 2 bottles of the 750 milliliter going for 140. You know, the 3 liter for 405 is like a steal when you compare it to that.
Yeah, and this is, what's the producer again? Did you say Claude de Pape?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a 3 liter of the 06 for 275 as well, which is even crazier deal. But yeah, for a great vintage like 05.
But even the 06 was great for Claude de Pape as well. I mean, the overall, Châteauneuf du Pape vintage may not have been as great, but Claude de Pape, if you look at the tasting notes and the reviews for the 06 versus the 05, the 05 is better, but only marginally better. Certainly not twice as good as the 05.
No.
In my mind, both of those are absolute steals.
Yeah, I mean, the 3 liter of 06 at 275 is also very head scratching when you see the 750 of 06 at 95. So that just makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, 3 liters, that's a big bottle. It's a lot of wine. Not many people are going to open those very often. It's always one of those things that I think can be a little bit tricky. Also, I must say both vintages show signs of past seepage, which can definitely turn bitters off. Now with big bottles, they are hand corked almost, I believe, 100% of the time, especially these really large bottles. So there can be seepage. I think generally it might be overfill seepage, or probably happened a long time ago. If the inspectors see any fresh seepage, they will reject the bottles, so those wouldn't be an auction. But that's always kind of somewhat, I think, with the format and the seepage, it's a bit of a detractor, but still, those are great deals. So I wouldn't be afraid.
All right, we've got Domaine Tempier Bandal. I'm just jumping around. I just had to mention that we have another Domaine Tempier coming at auction. We've got, I'm headed to Beaujolais. And by the way, if we ever see a bid by a Jay Malkovich on wine for a bottle of Domaine Tempier, we know whose it is. We have a 2016 Marcel Lapierre Julianas. We've got a couple of Marcel Lapierre on Morgon. I love the Cru Beaujolais. I love Marcel Lapierre. And $30, I think, is a fantastic deal for that. We've got two of those. Heading back to the Rhone, Domaine Gerard Chavin, Chateauneuf du Pape, an 01 for 105. Mm-hmm. This one was in the top 100 wine Spectator.
Well, there you go, Jeff. Got to go after those.
Well, when you put it against like Claude de Pape, that 05, I believe, that was like number one for Wine Spectator of 2007. So, you've got some pretty serious Chateauneuf du Papes in auction this week.
That's true. Yeah, I did notice, I only had a couple of Rhone wines, actually. I only had two. Since there was so much last week, I thought we'd give it a break. But there is a magnum of Jean-Louis Chauve Hermitage 02. Now, 02 was a dreadful vintage in the Southern Rhone, and I don't think there was a lot of, or even any decent Chateauneuf produced in 02. But in the Northern Rhone, supposedly a different story. And there's a mag, which always sticks out to me when you see mags of Jean-Louis Chauve. It's exciting. So that one, 02 Hermitage is at $650. And then there's a bottle of 15 Stéphane Augier Côte-Rôtie Reserve, two of those at $80. So those are my Rhone picks. If you don't mind, actually, Jeff, I have a selection of Chablis, and we have to mention these guys because there's just some stars in the auction this week. There's a handful of Ravenel wines. There's 11 Blanchot. There's 13 Blanchot, 05 Chapelot, 99 Les Clos, 11 Les Clos, and 13 Les Clos. And I don't need to mention the prices. As you can imagine, they are high to very high. But on the flip side, and still high quality wine, there's 19 Moreau-Naudet Chablis Vaillant at $55. There's some Dovisat 2000 Les Clos, $375, which is getting into approaching Ravenel territory there. But it's Les Clos, it's Dovisat, so it's very, very good. And then producer I'm not familiar with, Mont Blanc et Fils. There's a 2020 Les Clos, 5 of those at $85, 19 Vaudésir, 6 of those at $65, and 2021, actually, one of the younger wines on the site, 2021 Mont Blanc et Fils Chablis Vaudésir, 6 of those at $60. So those were my outside of Burgundy picks, Chablis picks, which I skipped over earlier.
All right, let's talk some other interesting stuff, or stuff that I think is interesting. Sure. 01 Marcel Dice Riesling Schonenberg. This one, $75. We've got 3 of those. I think, with 22 years of age, a nice Alsatian Riesling from a great producer. That one's going to be singing right now, but it's fantastic.
Schonenberg's Grand Cru too, right? I think it's Grand Cru Vineyard. And then heading a little south to the Loire, Olga Raffal, Chinon. Oh yeah, I saw the Raffal. There was Raffal in last week, and then I think it all sold. So
great. Amazing stuff. Again, 21 years of age, $65 just seems so incredibly reasonable to me. I know we were already kind of out of the Rhone, but there's a 2015 Stéphane Augier Côte.
Yeah. I just mentioned that one.
Oh, did you just mention that? I didn't even mention that. The other one that I wanted to mention was the 95 Mas Delma.
Oh yeah.
Gassac Rouge, which this $65. From what I understand, it's pretty similar to Domaine de Travaillon. And I thought that was
as good, but it's
not as good, but it is also a lot less expensive. So the question is it a third as good? Because it's like a third of the price.
It's true. Mas de Mas has got quite a, sort of following. It doesn't come up to auction very often. So it is kind of interesting to see, and also interesting to see something from 95 because it's definitely got a lot of time on it. So that's interesting. That would be cool to see. That'd be cool to try.
I'd be really curious to get that.
I mean, Travaillon, it's totally different wine, but it's still, that'd be interesting to try.
The only other thing I'll mention, and I know this is going to get you kicked off on a whole string of things. There was a non-vintage Les Chemins du Roi Brut Rosé for 140 that's already got some action. We've got 6 of those. And that one looks like it's doing really good on Cellar Track, or at least just in terms of on Cellar Track, get some good reviews. But the reason I mentioned is because the most hysterical thing about this review, or at least the stuff I saw on Cellar Tracker, was the packaging is peculiar to say the least. But obviously, people were basically talking about how crazy the packaging is, but it's actually a decent wine.
It's very silly. It's strange. Looks like a giant chess piece on the front of the bottle.
Yeah.
It's weird.
What other champagnes were you looking at?
Yeah, actually, the rosé. Speaking of which, the rosé has a bit on it. The Chemin
It does.
One of the bottles does. Yeah.
The rosé has a bit on it. Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Anyway, no. Let's see. I definitely flagged a couple things. Eric Rodet Blanc de Noir. Eric Rodet doesn't come up too often. It's very, very good. I actually had some of the rosé on Saturday. It was delicious. And I think this is a fairly recent disgorgement. There's an 09 Elie Ourier vintage, 4 of those at $570, so not cheap there, but not too surprising. Frederic Savard, Cru Boule de Rose Old Vines, one of those at $115. That was very cool to see. There's a full case of 08 Cru, which I had write down, as well as full case of not full case of half bottles, but 12 bottles of half bottles at 105 for the label number 5. So I think it's before they started giving, number edition it was on the bottles. But anyway, might be wrong about that. I'd have to double check. But anyway, that was great. 08 Cristal, 375, as well as 85 Rosé for 800, which is pretty wild, but those aged quite well. And then there was a Petit Bajon Obsidienne Blanc de Noir, something I'm not familiar with, wanted to look up, at 70. And then Pierre Peters Cuvée Reserve 105. And I think that wrapped it up for champagne for me. There was another, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a bottle of 14 Edmond Vattel Salceres in this week as well, skipping over to the Loire.
I did.
I think, because you mentioned. Did you mention something from Loire earlier? Yeah, you mentioned Rufo, I think.
Yep, the Chenin.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to mention before we wrap things up?
I think that's it for France for me this week.
All right, folks.
Great stuff.
That's a wrap. So we're putting a cork in it. From Paul Walker and Jeff McGurn here at WineBid's Finally Hammered, we wish you happy bidding and cheers.
Cheers.